And we're not doing any exercise that you don't know, all right?
That's important.
So we get the central nervous system firing in sort of a race intensity. It's really high intensity. And then the lateral band walk. We'll do that twice through, and then we'll go get in the sauna and chill out.
No cameras in the sauna, though. You don't want to see what happens in there.
Vamos.
I think motorsport has been in my blood since I was a kid.
Power up, power.
I was actually 2 years old when I was given my first go-kart.
Power, 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 run, run, come on, push, 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 push.
My name is Carlos Sainz. I drive for Renault Sport Formula 1.
Faster feet, come on, faster, faster, faster.
Born in Madrid, Spain.
Smashing against the wall, come on.
When I was 9 years old, I remember seeing Fernando Alonso winning the World Championship. In 2005, I meet Fernando Alonso in the Spanish Grand Prix. I remember going back home and saying to my dad, I want to be like Fernando Alonso, I want to be a Formula 1 driver. Hope one day I can add my name to the list of Spanish drivers that have won a Formula 1 race.
Fernando, who will win in the championship between you and Carlos?
I think it's difficult to predict, but you know, it depends of our teams a little bit. But if I have to bet my money, I will put on McLaren and myself.
What's happening to Carlos Sainz in his battle with Fernando Alonso? Sainz has taken a long way round onto the gravel. That's never going to win out that particular Spanish duel. Fernando Alonso is on his way home now to 5th place in this race, and what a performance that is!
I think it was definitely a good race, and we should be proud of that, but yeah, I think there is a lot more to come.
Carlos Sainz now puts Fernando Alonso under pressure. Is he going to try and launch one? He is down the inside. Alonso saw him coming. And there's Carlos Sainz. But Fernando Alonso got the inside line and just cuts him off.
Fernando Alonso is my racing hero, but I really want to beat him because I've been losing against him. I really want payback.
My view of McLaren has always been that they are the best racing team in the world. When I got the call to work here, it was extremely special. My name is Zach Brown. I'm Executive Director of McLaren Technology Group. I've been in motor racing my entire life. I'm now 46 years old. We have a lot to offer at McLaren. We've been absolutely dominant over the years.
And McLaren have already broken just about every record in the book.
You show up every day and look down the boulevard, and have the first thing you see is Niki Lauda's car. And Ayrton Senna's car.
And Ayrton Senna crosses the line. He is world champion.
We've got thousands of employees running around here that all share the same passion and desire to win. We've got a massive fan base, but it's been pretty hard to cheer for us because we've not been anywhere near racing at the front. You know, it's been a difficult 5-year run.
Yeah, get rid of this because you're kind of shifting. This is all drivers.
I felt I could contribute to making a difference.
We do everything in dollars.
If you're happy for me to flip them all to dollars, which I've done on the last page.
Flip them all to dollars,
Okay,
otherwise it starts becoming a bit.
And so I wanted to get into an environment that I had some work to do, as opposed to maybe joining a team that's on the top and you've got kind of only one way to go.
Winter testing is the first opportunity that we get to see the new cars for this year out on track. It's really a first opportunity for the teams to put their cars through their paces, to see if they're as good as they hope they're going to be, if they're as fast as they hope they're going to be, and crucially, if they are reliable. The stakes have really never been higher for McLaren. They are trying to rebuild themselves into a competitive championship-winning team. After so many years of disappointment, if they don't get it right this year, they're going to lose their driver.
I think Fernando is one of the best drivers in the history of Formula One. I don't think there's a team that wouldn't love to have Fernando in their racing car, so to have him stay with us, I think, is a big vote of confidence of how he feels we will race this year.
My name is Fernando Alonso. I'm 2 times world champion and I race for McLaren. I have a lot of power on the things that I may say, so I feel that responsibility, that leadership, and I try to guide the team in the best way possible.
I feel confident this year. We want to come out pretty strong and demonstrate that we're going to be back to our winning ways.
Clear, check.
Okay, Fernando, yeah, that's loud and clear for me.
Winter testing is always a moment of the year where we are all optimistic. And we have a lot of trust and faith on the car. We try to stress the car, you know, to the maximum.
Okay, nice work, Fernando. I need multifunction C2, position 4, please.
Yes, okay.
When I joined the team, we were fighting for the World Championship, and that was a different role than what we have now, which is trying to fight back and bringing the team back to the top positions.
Okay, Fernando, this pace is really good.
Copy.
Alonso's had a crash. Well, he's gone off. Like, the wheels come off his car.
It's rare this happens in testing. It's better that it happens now than it happens once you get to the first race. But it's, shall we say, it's a worrying thing to happen. Fernando's not going to be happy.
No, Formula One is not easy to hide anything in winter testing.
Assume that like this for the rest of the day. We go into another plan.
So many people and so many cameras. There are a lot of eyes on everyone. We need to have this. Crucial moment.
For a cracking 2018 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. The paddock is really starting to come to life.
I'm excited to be back here. Obviously I'd love to win. It should be a fun race.
In a race that could just conjure up anything in the next 51 laps. And you can feel it, the pressure in the air.
Make sure to be very clear in your analysis of the tires. But it's better to have, even if one is the best, it's better to have a 2 optimized than one that is not half pregnant, really.
The electronics go.
2018 has to be a season where Renault shows that we are progressing, and therefore our ambition to be fighting at the top in a few years' time is credible. My name is Cyril Abiteboul. I am Managing Director of Renault Sport Formula One. But what's fantastic is our lineup of drivers. Carlos. And Nico is one of the strongest in the grid.
There was no turning back.
The midfield is extremely tight. McLaren right now, they are our most direct competitor. If we have the ability to beat them, we'll say a lot about the progression of Renault. We need to deliver what people are expecting from us. If I don't deliver, I'm third.
There's always gonna be people making mistakes in Baku. For me, it's one of the most challenging tracks in Formula One at the moment.
And just a reminder about the tailwind in 3, 4, 15 and 16.
If you stay out of trouble, you could actually think about a top 5 finish.
Clear check. Yeah, Fernando, that's loud and clear for me.
It's the fastest street circuit in the world, and always that gives a lot of adrenaline for the spectators and for drivers as well.
So the cars begin their formation lap in Baku. One more chance to warm their tyres and warm their brakes.
It's a very particular track because you've got a first sector that is dominated by 90-degree corners. And you talk to the drivers, they tell you it's like driving very, very fast in a cage. Then you've got sector 2, which is very twisty in the old town, so that's very different. Sector 3 is pretty much one corner and a straight.
Okay, Fernando, 5 seconds to go.
Turn 1 then, who's going to come out on top? So far, all getting away cleanly. And there's damage. Wow, it's full of debris. There's contact down into turn 2. Fernando Alonso and Tarockin going wheel to wheel. Oh no, there's contact, Fernando Alonso.
Puncture switch, puncture switch.
Corner 2 and they crash into you. Fucking stupid. It's a black flag situation. What these guys they do, destroy the complete race.
We had 2 punctures and the car was nearly undrivable.
Okay, into box.
It was, say, not fair to have that damaged car on lap 1 and not having the possibility to fight back. You know, that anger to go back to the pit lane and change those tires. You know, the desire of keep racing. It was not the moment to retire that car.
I think most drivers would have parked the car and wouldn't have even thought about continuing in the race.
Race isn't over for us. Race isn't over.
Okay, Carlos, how is the balance?
Yeah, all good.
Here goes Carlos Sainz. He's up in 6th place. Tries to go around the outside, nothing doing.
At that point in the race, I really started attacking and really pushing flat out.
Carlos Sainz is on Verstappen's tail. Brilliant racing from all 3
My name is Carlos Oñoro. I'm Carlos Sainz's manager and his cousin. I mean, for me, it's heart attack after heart attack. Qualifying until the end of the race, it's like a roller coaster.
Carlos Sainz looking very recent.
It means a lot to be racing against Red Bull and to be pressuring them.
In a race like Baku, where you see that he's fighting for fourth, for fifth position, which is not normal, it's always exciting.
Verstappen might go down the inside, and he does so!
A podium is always something that you are aiming for. The difficulty is that there are 3 top teams, 2 cars each. That's already 6th position. Therefore, that leaves little room for us. But who knows, maybe there will be that opportunity for us, and we need to be sure to see that opportunity if it's given.
Sainz swoops around the outside of Verstappen. Nice move there from the driver in the Renault.
Oh, the super stop. I'm starting to regret a bit, I realize. I'm gonna start losing time with the Red Bull. Okay, so box to slap. Copy.
Carlos Sainz into the pits then. He's had to let the Red Bulls go.
The Red Bulls had pulled away. They were 10-15 seconds ahead of me, and they were both fighting each other.
Ricciardo desperate to get past Max Verstappen, but Verstappen aggressively defending against his teammate.
Yellow flags, turn
Yellow
1. Take care, turn 1.
Double yellow turn
Debris,
1. Turn 1. Both Red Bulls off at turn 1.
When you are driving for one of the teams in the midfield, I'm not gonna say I will celebrate the top teams crash into each other, but if Carlos goes up 2 places because the drivers decide to collide, it's good for him, and he gained 2 places for free.
Safety car in this lap. Okay, which position I'm in? You're currently P7. Okay.
Now we've got how many laps to go, but not many till the end. So new tires. We need to overtake Grosjean.
Right, on board then with Grosjean. He's weaving around, trying to get temperature into the tyres.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, Grosjean crash. Nice one, P6.
I'm fucking speechless. I can't fucking believe it.
That's how quick things can change in Formula One. Ouch.
Back with Fernando Alonso.
Fernando, you're doing an amazing job. This pace is really good.
Okay.
Okay, guys, how many laps to the end are we now? 7 laps remaining now. You're gaining 4/10 per lap to the cars ahead. Keep focus. Copy.
He ran across some debris.
At that point, I remember thinking about giving it a shot at that podium place.
Vamos, Carlos.
And 2 laps remaining now. Copy.
Sainz has pulled out from behind the slipstream. Nice move there. And he's now up into 5th place.
Nice job, Carlos. We need to focus on the last lap. Copy.
Hamilton takes the checkered flag. Carlos Sainz comes home to finish in 5th. means Fernando Alonso finishes as the second Spaniard in this race.
Nice job, mate. P5, well done.
Good job, guys.
Following his earlier incident, it's amazing Alonso finished at all. Only a driver of his caliber could have got that car to the end.
Well, you feel proud of your team, of your abilities also driving that car, of your commitment. You ended up with P7 and you feel very, very proud of that drive.
It was by far the best race of the season for me. Personally, despite the start, we will fight until the checkered flag.
What do you have next?
Finishing fifth was the best team result since we returned to Formula One, but we are still behind McLaren in terms of the championship.
Nice drive.
It was one of those weekends that you go back home really happy because you've contributed to a very big team result. Yeah, really good one. Yeah, the red heels were like all over the place. Thank you. You guys must have been enjoying it from the outside. Leclerc got a very good slipstream, but then I got him back. I said, this guy is not beating me, no fucking way. I went bananas to him like Have some fun.
Eso es falta. No dejes que se vaya. Claro. Me encanta.
Carlos is my younger cousin, so we are very close. We've been very close since he was born, basically.
Oye, me quiero tomar por culo, tío.
His father is my uncle. Even if you haven't heard about Carlos Sainz, the motorsport legend, when you meet him, you can tell he's a powerful guy.
¡Joder! ¡Venga ya, hombre! Pero, por favor. Y ahora, mira, burreo. Joder.
And obviously, if you know something about sports, Carlos' father is an icon of motorsport. For Carlos Jr., growing up with his dad has had positives and negatives. You've got free advice from a legend. At the same time, I think it was a little bit tough because everywhere that Carlos went racing, he was like pointed out that, look, that's the son of Carlos Sainz. I want to beat that guy. That kind of jealousy, he has had to prove a lot of people wrong.
If I could be invisible, I would love to be invisible. This is his life, his sport, his time, and you know, I have been enough time in the camera, so I'm quite happy to leave him alone.
Obviously, I know that my dad is a very famous name. I'm incredibly proud to be his son. But me personally, I want to create my own name, my own career in Formula One.
Carlos is still growing, he's still maturing somehow, and I remember how I was with 22, 23. He's quite smart sometimes.
Oh, look at this. This is not a dog, this is a piece of shit.
It is emotional racing in Spain for me. You know, it's once a year that you have the home Grand Prix.
Please do not push. For safety reasons, please do not push, por favor.
You know, the amount of work you put off track to make people happy, to sign as many autographs as possible. to take time for the kids, to take pictures, to give presents, you know, whatever you can do to make people happy, you try to do it that weekend. Nice to go up on these ones, but we cannot fit in this seat.
Yeah, this is good.
It's this one.
I've not been dog pilot for fucking years. Man.
Yeah?
Too old.
It's good fun, still good fun.
Yeah, I haven't done it for so long.
Karting has been, for me, probably the best part of my racing career. I've been in go-karts for more than 15 years, and probably the best memories are coming from that part of my life.
Good hold on. It's hard. It's so hard.
Ir poco a poco. No podéis adelantar, no. Hoy es solo una exhibición.
Pero tú así, tú adelanta.
Hoy es una exhibición solo. Hoy venimos a veros tranquilos.
When you start racing and you jump in a go-kart for the first time, there is some kind of freedom. As a kid, you normally follow your parents and your friends and your teacher at the school. Everything is always behind some rules. And the first time you are behind the wheel, you are yourself and you are alone on a racetrack. That feeling, I think, together with the speed and together with adrenaline, is something that is difficult not to fall in love.
My dad comes nearly to every race, maybe 16, 17 races a year out of 21. My sisters and my mom told me that he gets a bit too nervous if he doesn't come to a Grand Prix weekend.
I reckon Grosjean's not coming round turn one. What do you reckon?
Might make one, two.
Okay, yeah.
In the midfield, all Spanish eyes will be looking at Fernando Alonso in the McLaren and Carlos Sainz in the Renault. Alonso's in 8th, just one place ahead of his fellow Spaniard.
I am a competitive guy. I always visualize winning. That guy who was your hero, your killer instinct immediately comes in and you suddenly take it as one rival more that you want to beat.
When you are on the grid, you go into that zone, into that moment of it's just the car and yourself. Compete, race, win. You just need to deliver.
And radio check, Carlos?
Yeah, all good.
There is only one guy who's allowed to talk to the driver when he's out there on track. It's a race engineer for Carlos. It's Carol.
Okay, Carlos. Good luck, mate. Last car approaching the grid.
It's a good start for Carlos Sainz. Can he keep ahead of Alonso coming into turn 1? Oh, he just manages it. But he's out wide and in the gravel. That's Alonso's chance to go round the outside. He's in trouble too. Oh, and off it's Grosjean. Massive accident.
That looks like Romain Grosjean very much out of this race.
Oh, and there's a Renault involved as well.
Is that Carlos Sainz? I think it is.
No, that looks like inside Nico Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg is out of this race.
It was grosjean. Exactly what I said at the beginning. I said he's not coming around turn one.
We can get racing once again. Sainz is up in 8th place.
And Sainz is pressuring Magnussen for 7th. Tries to go around the outside at turn 3. Not going to get through there.
Down in 11th.
And here's Alonso in 11th. He's now trying to attack Ocon in the same place, and he is going to go around the outside. He's still got it, hasn't he? What a move!
Okay, Carlos, so box the slap. Going in, Carlos Whitley. So you will be close to Ericsson on pit exit.
Alonso's caught Hartley on the straight, and he's got him.
Sainz is going for it here with Marcus Ericsson.
Trying to go around the outside. Ericsson just leads on him.
Oh, they're going to touch, aren't they?
That is some great side-by-side action. Unbelievably close.
He has to look after his tyres. Our race isn't with Ericsson, mate.
Sainz is desperate to overtake Ericsson. Ericsson's long overdue a pit stop. Don't forget, these tyres need to last Sainz till the end of the Grand Prix.
Why I cannot pass? He's so fast on the straight.
Keep him calm, keep him calm. He doesn't need to pass it. It's the cars behind him he's to worry about.
You know, that's Leclerc and Alonso behind him.
Okay, Carlos. Behind you, you have Leclerc and Alonso. Let's stay calm. We need to focus on tires.
Copy.
In the race, you go into that more aggressive mode. You know that you are in your home Grand Prix and you know that you need to make moves, to try and gain positions, to try and put on a good show.
This race is with Leclerc and Alonso behind, not Ericsson. That's what I was just told.
Well, tell him again and tell him to drop back and stop fucking racing him, please. If you won't tell him, I will tell him. He's going to wear his fronts out and we're going to lose this race.
Look after the tires and bring it home, please.
Marcus Ericsson is finally off to the pits, unleashing Sainz into 7th place. But just behind is Charles Leclerc, who's getting passed by Fernando Alonso. Alonso in 8th now.
Next car behind you now is Alonso. 6 laps to go.
He just had a quick pressure drop through turn 3.
When you say drop, you mean a little tiny wincy one or something we need to be scared of?
Quite scared, yeah, we were down to around 2 bar.
Okay.
Oh, the engine.
It's fuel pressure.
I had a fuel dropout.
Turn the engine up, please, Carol.
Scenario 1.
Sainz has engine trouble. He'll be down on power for these final few laps.
Roto. No me lo puedo creer, se quedaba nada.
Carlos Sainz has Fernando Alonso breathing down his neck.
Right, what can we do through 3? Can we go a little bit easier through 3 so we don't get those dropouts?
It will help, but it probably won't stop it.
Okay, Carlos, we need to take it easy to turn 3.
How easy? Like how much?
We need a big lift up.
Like that is good. Like that is very good.
Okay, keep doing that, please.
Alonso is 8 seconds behind, 8 seconds behind.
So I really needed to slow down, but at the same time I had Fernando pushing behind me. No?
Okay, Fernando, Sainz is slowing. Now I want 100% focus on Sainz.
Okay.
Ha dicho engine. Tiene que entrar muy despacio en la curva 3 porque se queda sin...
Pues verás ahora Fernando cómo va a apretar.
Fernando Alonso has just put in his fastest lap of the race.
Okay, Carlos, 5 laps to go.
I asked to my engineer to keep telling me the lap times of Fernando.
Okay, 2 laps to go. 5-second gap to Alonso behind. Fernando, last lap you were 2 seconds quicker than Sainz.
Una vuelta.
Alonso is continuing to gain on Sainz.
This is the last lap.
We didn't know we were going to make it.
And there's Carlos Sainz.
And the Renault does it, finishing 7th in front of McLaren's Fernando Alonso.
Menos mal. Mira Fernando donde le tenía ya, ¿eh? En el cogote subido.
Nice job, mate. P7, P7, well done.
Good job, Carlos. Be McLaren.
When he opened the radio, he went, engine. No fucking way.
Great to get ahead of blocks at the start.
And McLaren. We overtook them in the championship.
We had some high hopes. I think we are the underdogs now. It's not a place McLaren is used to being.
It's a very decent finish for us. I think we have a team that is definitely finally starting to believe.
Fernando was, the first world champion in Formula One for Spain. Carlos has a great respect for him. He is competing with his hero.
Good job, guys. Good job.
Fernando is the best driver in motorsport at the moment. So I know I'm fighting against the best, even if it's for P7.
Obviously, Fernando and Carlos are a different generation. Carlos knows he's the next Spanish driver in Formula One, but he wants to do things his own way.
It's incredible, no? How life is. When I met him when I was 10, who would have told me that 14 years later I would have ended up battling against the best?
Okay, cheers, guys. Thanks for the win. Thank you.
This year, I've had to look for another contract.
Daniel's very much at a crossroads.
What if I just break free?
Max is their chosen star.
The better I do, the better offers I get.
Until I lift that trophy, I won't be satisfied.
This is my time. It's my fucking time.
What has happened to Daniel Ricciardo?
Losing power.
The Trotter Chronicles From Gold to Grit, a novelization by Gemini. Prologue, The Man in the Sharp Suit. The air in the office was thick with the scent of expensive mahogany and the faint, clinical aroma of high-end air purifiers. Justin, a man whose skin looked like it had been buffed by a professional at a Swiss spa, leaned back in his leather chair. He adjusted his glasses, looking at the two men sitting across from him. One of them, Derek Delboy Trotter, was a man who looked like he belonged in a very different kind of office one, with a calendar of a local garage on the wall and a lingering smell of cigar smoke and hopeful desperation. Del was dressed in what he considered his business best, a suit that shimmered just a bit too much under the fluorescent lights, and enough gold jewelry to make a pirate blush. Next to him sat Rodney, younger, leaner, and perpetually looking like he had just realized he'd left the oven on at home. Rodney was sweating, not the confident sweat of an athlete, but the cold, clammy moisture of a man who knew his brother was about to say something that would embarrass them both for the next century. I've got all the basic details about your business career. Justin began, his voice smooth and devoid of any Peckham grit. But what I'd like to do is to get an insight into the real you. How you started, how you became so successful, but more importantly, your lives and your race on Theater. Del Boy's eyes lit up. He didn't know what a raison d'être was, but it sounded French, and in those world, French meant class. Oh, no, Del whispered to Rodney, Laboratory Garney. Rodney closed his eyes and prayed for the floor to open. It's not Laboratory Garney. Del, he hissed, he's asking for our reason for being. Exactly what I said. Prove. Del snapped back, before turning to Justin with a smile that could sell ice to an Eskimo and then charge him for the delivery. Well, Justin, where shall I start? Up to a few years ago, we were just very ordinary people living. Well, very ordinary lives, weren't we, Rodney? And so, the story began. A story of a watch found in a garage, a fortune made in an instant, and a fall so spectacular it made the Hindenburg look like a minor fender bender. Chapter 1, The Caribbean Dream. The sun over Barbados didn't just shine, it announced itself. It turned the turquoise water into a sheet of diamonds and the white sand into something so bright it hurt to look at without designer sunglasses, which, of course, the trotters were wearing. Only a few months prior, the trotters had been living in a council flat in Peckham, wondering if the hooky VCers they were selling would last through the first reel of Rambo. Then came the watch, an 18th century Harrison marine chronometer hidden in their garage for decades. It had sold at Sotheby's for £6.5 million. In an instant, Derek Trotter, the man who once sold one-legged turkeys at Christmas, was a multimillionaire. Look at this, Rodney, Del had said, leaning over the balcony of their private villa. He was holding a glass of something blue with a miniature umbrella in it. Total luxury. This is what we were born for. Mange tout, Rodney, mange tout. Rodney was sitting in a hammock, trying to read a book on sociology, but failing because Cassandra kept applying sun cream to his back. It's a bit much, isn't it, Del? I mean, 6 months ago we were sharing a bathroom with a leak that Uncle Albert called characterful. Characterful. It was a health hazard. Del laughed. But look at us now. We've divvied the dosh up. We made sure Uncle Albert got a nice little drink, figuratively speaking, though knowing him, he's probably literally drinking most of it down on the coast with Elsie Partridge. They had been the kings of the island. They donated to charity mostly because Del liked the gala dinners, and they invested. Oh, how they invested. Dell had met a man in a bar. A visionary, Dell called him. A con artist, Rodney had countered. The man spoke of Central American markets, of vibrant ventures, and emerging economies. He spoke of turning millions into billions. It was a royal mint. Rodney, Dell shouted into the tropical wind. We were making money while we slept. But the Caribbean sun has a way of blinding you to the clouds on the horizon. Chapter 2. The Sound of the Crash. The end didn't come with a bang. It came with a phone call and a decline message on a credit card at a 5-star hotel. What do you mean? Insufficient funds. Dell had barked at the hotel manager, his gold rings clacking against the marble countertop. Do you know who I am? I'm Derek Trotter. I've got more money than the Sultan of Brunei's paperboy. The manager was polite but firm. The Central American market hadn't just dipped, it had evaporated. A coup, a currency collapse, and a series of creative accounting errors by their visionary friend had turned the Trotter fortune into a pile of worthless digital ash. Rodney, Dell whispered, his face turning a shade of gray that matched the London fog they had tried so hard to escape. The negotiations, they've collapsed. Collapsed. Rodney felt his stomach drop. Dell, we put everything into that venture. The houses, the stocks, the peacocks. I know. Dell said, his bravado finally cracking. We've even paid for this hotel on a credit card. A credit card which has now been withdrawn. The journey back to the UK was a blur of cramped airplane seats and the crushing realization that the dream was over. They weren't returning to a hero's welcome. They were returning to a financial wilderness. And it wasn't just them. Back in Peckham, the ripples of their failure were turning into waves. Michael Fisher, the landlord of the Nag's Head and a man who had trusted Dell with his life savings, was now behind bars. He had remortgaged the pub to follow the Trotter gold mine, and when it collapsed, he had tried to recoup the losses by embezzling from the brewery. He was a desperate man, and Dell felt the weight of every brick in Mike's prison cell. Chapter 3. The Court of Peckham. The corridors of the courthouse felt like a tomb. Denzel, a man whose nerves were usually held together by habit and hope, was pacing so fast he was nearly burning a hole in the linoleum. Denzel, sit down, Albert's voice echoed. Denzel stopped and looked at the group gathered. There was Trigger, looking as vacant as a Sunday morning in a library. There was Boyke, looking smug despite the circumstances. And there was Sid, the cafe owner, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I can't, Albert, Denzel groaned. I've never been a character witness before. I'm worried. I think Dole's made a terrible mistake having us for here. It's like inviting the Manson family to dinner. Don't be so dramatic, Trigger said, staring at a fly on the wall. I'm going to tell them I hear voices. Trigger, you're not the one on trial, Denzel hissed. I know, Trigger replied simply, "But I still hear voices." Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was even grimmer. The inland revenue was a beast that didn't care about mange tout or lovely jubbly. They wanted their pound of flesh, and they wanted it in sterling. Dell and Rodney stood before the judge. The properties were gone. The cars were gone. The peacocks had probably been repossessed by a very confused bailiff. Are there any mitigating circumstances? Their lawyer asked. Dell stepped forward, adjusting his tie. "Oh, yes, you must remember to tell them that we were slaves to detail, wouldn't you, Rodney? We made certain that we always got our checks off to the inland revenue on time. Always," Rodney added, his voice cracking. "Fair dues," Dell whispered as the judge looked down at them. "They bounced, but they was always on time." The verdict was swift. Bankruptcy. They weren't going to prison, not yet, but they were being stripped of everything. The debt stood at $48,750 for pounds. It was a number that haunted those dreams. It wasn't just money, it was the price of his pride. Chapter 4, The Wrong Gentleman. Amidst the financial ruins, a personal tragedy struck. Uncle Albert, the man who had survived the Battle of the Atlantic only to be nearly killed by those cooking 1,000 times, had passed away. The funeral was a somber affair, or it should have been. The Trotters arrived at the cemetery, faces long and hearts heavy. "I feel bad, you know," Dell whispered to Rodney as they walked toward the open grave, "leaving him here on his own while we was all off globe-trotting." "He wasn't on his own, Dell," Rodney said. "He had Elsie. He was happy." They stood by the grave, listening to the vicar speak of a man named Bunny who had served in the RAF. Bunny. Dell frowned. Why did he call him Bunny? Well, that's what they called him in the RAF, didn't they? A stranger next to them whispered, "Because his surname was Warren." Dell froze. He looked at the headstone. He looked at the grieving widow, who was definitely not Elsie Partridge. He looked at the photo of the deceased man who looked remarkably like Albert, but was missing the signature during the war beard. "Rodney," Dell hissed, his eyes wide. "Is that a Spitfire on the coffin?" "Yeah," Rodney whispered back. "We're at the wrong funeral." They retreated with the quiet dignity of two men who had just realized they were mourning a complete stranger. It was the perfect metaphor for their lives, showing up with good intentions only to realize they were in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong dead relative. Chapter 5, New Management. Back at Nelson Mandela House, the flat felt smaller than it used to. The wallpaper was peeling, and the ghost of their millionaire lifestyle lingered in the form of a single, half-empty bottle of expensive cognac. "The firm's been liquidated," Rodney said, staring at the kitchen table. "Trotter's Independent Traders is no more. It's Capit." "No, no, no," Dell said, his mind racing. "The firm can go on trading. It's just that I've been disqualified from running it. That doesn't mean to say I can't work for it." He looked at Rodney, really looked at him. "We need a new managing director," Del mused. "Someone young, someone enthusiastic, someone full of ideas." Rodney looked around the room. "Who? The window cleaner?" "No, Rodney, you." Rodney's jaw dropped. "Me? Del, I can't run a company. I can't even run a bath without getting a headache. Legally, there is nothing to stop you," Del insisted. "You're clean. No bankruptcy, no disqualification. You'd be the boss. Rodney Trotter, managing director." And so, the power dynamic shifted. Within days, the local paper carried a small advertisement, "Trotter's Independent Traders, now under new management. Managing Director, Rodney Trotter." Rodney took to the role with a terrifying level of seriousness. He started wearing a tie at breakfast. He spoke about executive stress and logistical paradigms. He even tried to listen to Mozart to unwind. Mozart's Symphony No. 38 in D major. Rodney explained to Trigger one evening in the flat. "I find it helps me ease my executive stress." Trigger nodded slowly. "Ain't there no words to this, Dave?" "No, Trigger, it's instrumental." Del watched his brother with a mix of pride and annoyance. He was back in the game, even if he was technically just the staff. But the debt to the taxman still loomed. They needed a big score. They needed a miracle. And then the phone rang. Chapter 6, The Gold Rush. The studio lights were blinding. Jonathan Ross, a man who seemed to be made of charisma and expensive hair products, smiled at the camera. "Welcome to Gold Rush," he announced, "the fastest game show on TV. This is the show where you can win anything from £1 to £100,000. In the contestants' seat sat Derek Trotter. He had lied about his hobbies, claiming to love 16th century Italian Renaissance art instead of seeing what fell off the back of a lorry. And he had navigated the early rounds with the cunning of a street fox. He reached the final stages. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knockoff Swiss Army knife. For £50,000, Derek, Jonathan Ross said, leaning in, which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and The Enchantment? Was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Del felt the sweat prickling under his shimmery suit. He knew this, or he thought he knew it, but his brain was a jumble of French phrases and Peckham market prices. "I'm going to have to use me old SOS, aren't I?" Del said, his voice trembling. "I'll call my brother, Rodney." Back at the flat, Rodney and Cassandra were dressed in their fantasy therapy outfits, Rodney as a gladiator and Cassandra as a police officer. It was supposed to be a quiet night of memory baggage unloading. The phone screamed. "Hello," Rodney snapped, assuming it was their annoying neighbor, Mickey Pierce. "Piss off, Mickey, you're getting on my tits now." "Rodney, it's Jonathan Ross." The silence that followed was deafening. Rodney realized he had just told one of the most famous men in Britain to piss off. "Rodney, we need your help," Jonathan said, hurried. "Derek is on 25,000, going for 50. Which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and The Enchantment? Was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo?" Rodney didn't hesitate. He had to GCEs. He had been listening to Mozart for a week. He was an executive. "Ravel," Rodney said with absolute certainty. 100%. "Del, it's Ravel." Del turned back to the camera, his chest puffed out. "I'll go with that. Jonathan, it's Ravel." Jonathan Ross looked at him with a face full of pity. "Derek, that was the wrong answer. It was Rodrigo." The world seemed to stop spinning. Del's face went through every shade of red known to man. He had lost it all. Again. On national television. Chapter 7, The Phoenix of Peckham. The silence in the flat that night was heavy. Del sat on the sofa, still wearing his game show suit, staring at the floor. Raquel was in the kitchen, and Rodney was hiding in his room, probably trying to find a way to dismantle his gladiator armor without making a sound. The phone rang. "If that's Mickey Pierce," Del growled, picking it up, "I'm going to murder him." "Hello, is this Derek Trotter?" A voice asked. It sounded professional. "This is the producer of Gold Rush." Del rolled his eyes. "Oh, give it a rest, Mickey. I can hear the jukebox in the Nag's Head from here." "No, Mr. Trotter. This is serious. We've made a mistake. Our researchers checked the facts. Ravel did write the music for The Child and The Enchantment. Even though he's a composer and not primarily a guitarist, the question was flawed." Del sat up straight. "A mistake? You mean I was right?" "You were right. We're offering you the 50,000 pounds, or the chance to come back and play for the 100,000. Del looked at the room. He looked at Rodney, who had peeked his head out of the bedroom door. He looked at Raquel, who was standing in the doorway with hope in her eyes. "Give all the money to charity," Del shouted into the phone, his old bravado returning in a rush of adrenaline. "And if you phone here once again, I'm going to come down there and kick your arse into shredded duck. Goodbye." He slammed the phone down. "Del," Rodney screamed. "What are you doing? That was 50 grand. Del started to laugh. A deep, wheezing Peckham laugh. It was Mickey Pierce, Rodney. I could hear the jukebox. He thought he could wind me up, but nobody winds up Derek Trotter. He stood up, adjusting his cuffs. "We're the Trotters, Rodney. We don't need charity. We're back in business. New management, new ideas, this time next year." Rodney sighed, but he couldn't help but smile. "We'll be millionaires?" "No," Del said, throwing an arm around his brother's shoulder. "This time next year, we'll be debt-free. And that, Rodney, is bonjour." "It's bonjour, Del," Rodney corrected. "Exactly what I said, prove exactly what I said. The neon sign of the Nag's Head flickered in the distance, a beacon of hope in the heart of Peckham. The Trotters were down, but they were never out, because as long as there was a deal to be made and a brother to blame, the dream would never die. Chapter 8: The Cold Light of Day. The following morning did not bring the clarity Del Boy had hoped for. Instead, it brought a pounding headache and the lingering suspicion that he might have made a catastrophic tactical error. He sat at the Formica table in the kitchen, nursing a mug of tea that was mostly sugar. Rodney stumbled in, looking disheveled. "Del," Rodney said, his voice flat, "I've been thinking about that phone call last night." "Forget it, Rodney," Del snapped. Mickey Pierce, professional wind-up merchant, probably recorded the whole thing to play at the pub later. Low D toilet, Rodney. Water under the bridge. "Del, I went to the pub this morning to get some milk because the fridge is on the blink again. And Mickey Pierce was there. He looked as miserable as a rainy Tuesday in Margate. Apparently, his latest business ventures selling laser-cut toast just failed. He didn't even have enough credit on his phone to make a prank call." Del froze, his mug halfway to his lips. "What?" "And there's more. Sid showed me the morning paper. There's a small headline on page 12. Game show blunder. BBC apologizes to Peckham contestant over classical music gaffe." The silence in the kitchen was heavy. You could hear the distant rumble of the 171 bus and the slow, rhythmic dripping of the leaky tap. So, Del whispered, his voice barely audible, "It wasn't Mickey. It was the producer. Del, you told the BBC to give £50,000 to charity in the name of the Trotters." Del Boy put his mug down. He stared at the wall, at the framed picture of their mother. "Well," he said, his voice suddenly bright and brittle, At least we'll get a plaque, or a mention in the newsletter. It's tax deductible, ain't it?" "We don't pay tax, Del. We're bankrupt," Rodney shouted. "Details, Rodney, details." Del stood up, pacing the small kitchen. "This is just a temporary setback, a minor hiccup in the grand tapestry of Trotter fortunes. We're under new management. Remember, Managing Director Rodney Trotter. What's our first move, boss?" Rodney looked at the pile of unpaid bills on the counter. "Our first move is to find something to sell. Something that doesn't involve the Sultan of Brunei or the BBC." Chapter 9: The Electronic Revolution. Rodney's first official act as managing director was to meet with Monkey Harris. Monkey was a man who lived up to his name short, agile, and always looking for a way to climb a bit higher on the social ladder. He met Rodney in the back of a van parked behind the Nag's Head. "I've got a consignment, Rodney," Monkey whispered, opening a cardboard box. "Electronic personal organizers. Top of the range. They tell the time, store 500 names, and have a built-in calculator. They're selling like crazy in the West End. Rodney picked one up. It was a sleek, black plastic device that looked like something from a low-budget sci-fi movie. How much? For you, a tenner apiece. I've got 200 of them. Rodney calculated. 200 at 10 pounds was 2,000. If they sold them for 30, that was for 1,000 pounds profit. It wasn't 50,000, but it was a start. I'll take them, Rodney said, trying to sound executive. But I'll need to pay in installments. Cash flow, you understand? Monkey nodded. I understand. Cash flow is the soul of business. I'll drop them off at Nelson Mandela House tonight. When Rodney returned to the flat, he found Del Boy trying to fix the washing machine with a bent coat hanger. Good news, Del. I've secured our first inventory. Electronic personal organizers. The future of business. We're going to modernize Peckham. One address book at a time. Del looked at the device. Electronic organizers. People round here can barely organize a trip to the toilet. Rodney, who's going to buy these? Everyone. Busy professionals, students, anyone who needs to stay on top of their game. It's executive stress management. Del, der chic. HMM, Del said, his eyes narrowing. They look a bit plastic. Are they waterproof? Why would they need to be waterproof? In case it rains on the market stall. Rodney, think of Voyage du Pois. Chapter 10. Iconoclastic Autosuggestion. While the business world was being revolutionized by plastic organizers, the domestic world of the Trotters was entering the realm of fantasy therapy. Cassandra had insisted, after the stress of the bankruptcy and the game show disaster, she felt their relationship needed a reboot. She had found a book by an American psychologist who spoke of memory baggage and the need to create our own make-believe world. Iconoclastic autosuggestion. Rodney explained to Del Boy while they were sorting the organizers. It's about rejecting reality and becoming different people, just for an evening. Sounds like what I've been doing for 40 years, Rodney. Del quipped. What's the catch? We write down our fantasy figures, and then we become them. No dressing up. It's all in the mind. But as with everything in the Trotter household, the no dressing up rule was the first to go. Thursday night arrived. Del had agreed to take Raquel and Damien out to see a film, giving Rodney and Cassandra the flat to themselves. Or so Rodney thought. I'm taking them to see that new cartoon, Del said, adjusting his coat, the one about the singing fish. We'll be back late. Enjoy your autosuggestion. Rodney waited until the door closed. He went to his bedroom and emerged 10 minutes later wearing a leather skirt, a plastic chest plate, and sandals. He looked like he had been rejected from a high school production of Spartacus. Cassandra emerged from the bathroom. She was wearing a police uniform, complete with a hat and a plastic truncheon. Rodney, she gasped. I thought we said no dressing up. I couldn't help it. Cass, the book said to fully immerse yourself. I'm Russell Crowe in Gladiator. And I'm a detective from the bill. Cassandra sighed. You look different. Strength and honor, Cassandra, Rodney said, striking a pose that nearly caused his chest plate to pop off. Now, let us unload our baggage. They sat on the sofa, trying to be reborn, but the atmosphere was somewhat dampened by the smell of those lingering cigar smoke and the faint sound of the neighbor's heavy metal music. So, Rodney began, trying to deepen his voice. On my signal, unleash the feelings. Rodney, I don't feel like a detective. I feel like an idiot. That's just the memory baggage talking. Reject it. You are an officer of the law. I am a hero of Rome. Suddenly, the front door burst open. We're back, Del Boy shouted, stumbling in with Raquel and Damien. The cinema was full. Apparently, every kid in Peckham wants to see a singing fish. He stopped dead. He looked at Rodney. He looked at Cassandra. Oh, my God, Del whispered, his eyes widening. Rodney, what have you done to her? Is she arresting you? It's therapy, Del, Rodney hissed, trying to hide behind a cushion. Go away. Therapy, you look like you're about to fight a lion in a police station. Del started to laugh. A deep, wheezing sound. Raquel, come and see this. Russell Crowe and the Bill are having a meeting in our front room. The fantasy was officially over. Reality hadn't just returned, it had kicked the door down and started laughing at them. Chapter 11, The Sultan's Shadow. A few days later, the executive's stress was reaching a fever pitch. The organizers weren't selling as well as Rodney hoped, mostly because people in Peckham preferred to write their numbers on the back of cigarette packets. Rodney was sitting at the kitchen table, Mozart playing softly in the background, when the phone rang. Trotter's Independent Traders, Managing Director Rodney Trotter speaking, he said, trying to sound bored and important. Good evening, a voice said with a thick, exotic accent. I am wishing to speak with Managing Director. Rodney's eyes narrowed. This is he. Who is calling? My name is Asif Hazen. I am representative of Sultan of Brunei. Rodney rolled his eyes. He looked at Delboy, who was pretending to read the paper, but was clearly listening. The Sultan of Brunei, Rodney repeated loudly. Well, how can I be of assistance, sir? His Highness has seen your advertisement in the newspaper. He is very impressed with your party planning and consultancy. Is he now? Rodney smirked. And what does His Highness want? Does he want me to fly out and organize a palace warming? Exactly. He wants you to fly to Brunei. All expenses paid. He has bought a crappy old three-wheeled van, and he wants to know where to start it on cold mornings. Rodney's smirk vanished. he slammed the phone down. "Shove it, Mickey," he yelled at the dead line. "Just shove it." "What happened?" Dell asked, looking up. "Dave's just had a big row with the Sultan of Brunei." It was Mickey Pierce, Dell. I could hear the jukebox. He thinks he's so clever, using an accent. But as Rodney sat back down, his Mozart symphony reached a crescendo. He looked at the advertisement he had placed. He had listed consultancy and party planning. It was a professional advert. He looked at the phone. For a fleeting second, he wondered, what if the Sultan of Brunei really did have an old van? What if he really did need a consultant from Peckham? "Dell," Rodney whispered, "do you think—" "Don't worry, Rodney," Dell said, patting him on the shoulder. "The world's full of surprises. Look at Nicky Pierce, he's only just learned to read." They sat in the quiet flat, to brothers bound by blood, bankruptcy, and a never-ending cycle of nearly and almost. They were back where they started, in Nelson Mandela House, with a mountain of debt and a box of plastic organizers. But as the neon sign of the Nags had flickered outside, Del Boy looked at his brother. "This time next year, Rodney," he said, the old spark returning to his eyes, "this time next year, we'll have sold all them organizers. We'll be back on top. Mange tout, Rodney. Mange tout." And in the heart of Peckham, that was enough. The end of Volume I. The Peckham Phoenix. A novelization of the Trotter Chronicles. Chapter 1. The Yellow Ghost of Peckham. The yellow three-wheeled Reliant Regal then rattled through the streets of Peckham like a skeletal remains of a decade everyone else had tried to forget. On its side, the faded lettering still defiantly proclaimed Trotter's Independent Traders, New York, Paris, Peckham. It was a lie, of course. They had been to Paris briefly. They had never been to New York, and Peckham was currently trying its best to pretend they didn't exist. Derek Delboy Trotter sat behind the wheel, his rings catching the stray glints of a London sun that looked like it had been filtered through a greasy chip wrapper. He was humming the theme tune to his own life, a melody of seasons changing and tides turning. "I'll fetch the suitcase from the van," he muttered to himself, a mantra of the perpetual salesman. Beside him sat Rodney. Rodney, the graduate with 2 GCEs and a brain that was currently a chaotic blender of existential dread and marital anxiety. Rodney was looking at the dashboard as if it were a ticking bomb. "What's up with you, Rodney?" Dell asked, his voice a gravelly mix of concern and irritation. "You look like a man who's just found out his lottery ticket was for last week's draw." "I'm a bit nervous, Dell," Rodney admitted, his voice cracking slightly. "This bloke we're going to see, this Justin, he's a documentary maker, right? He's not going to be asking me anything personal about my private life." Dell swung the van around the corner with the grace of a shopping trolley in a hurricane. "Of course he ain't. We're not that private, are we?" We're public figures, the trotters of Nelson Mandela House. But what about, me and Cassandra, our hiccups? Dell rolled his eyes. He's not going to want to know about your little problems in the bedroom department, Rodney. Though, strictly speaking, if you're having hiccups in the bedroom, you're probably doing it wrong. I told you that in confidence, Rodney hissed, his face reddening to the color of a ripe tomato. And I'm keeping it in confidence. Dell shouted back. I'm not going to be telling him about jiffins and what Cassandra wears. I've got more class than that, mostly. Chapter 2, The Interrogator. Justin was the kind of man who wore spectacles not because he needed them, but because they made his expensive degree look even more expensive. His office was a minimalist vacuum of white walls and overpriced Scandinavian furniture. He looked at the Trotter brothers as if they were a rare species of beetle that had accidentally crawled onto his silk tie. Sorry to keep you waiting, Justin said, his voice dripping with the practiced sincerity of a BBC middle manager. It's been a particularly busy morning. Now, I've got all the basic details about your business career, the watches, the bottled water, the pre-war lead soldiers. But what I'd like to do is to get an insight into the real you. Dell leaned back, crossing his legs and adjusting his tie. He felt at home. Give Del Boy an audience and a chance to rewrite history, and he was more dangerous than a shark in a tuxedo. How you started, how you became so successful, Justin continued, leaning forward, but more importantly, your lives and your raison d'etre. Del blinked. Oh, no. Laboratory Garni. I don't use that stuff. It's all natural, this hair. Rodney groaned into his hands. He means reason for being. Del. I knew that. Del snapped. I was just checking if he did. Right then, Justin. Where shall I start? Up to a few years ago, we were just very ordinary people living very ordinary lives. Weren't we, Rodney? Rodney gave a hollow laugh. Ordinary. Del, our childhood involved hiding from the rent collector behind a sofa that was technically also being repossessed. Details, details. Del waved a hand dismissively. And then, as you know, one day I discovered an historic and almost priceless artifact. A watch. A Harrison Lesser watch. Found it in the back of a garage. It was like a sign from the gods of commerce. Chapter 3, The Golden Age. For a brief, shimmering moment in the mid-90s, the Trotters had been kings. The novel of their lives had transitioned from a gritty social drama to a glossy jet-set thriller. Anyway, Del continued, his eyes glazing over with the memory of pure, unadulterated wealth. At first, we didn't know what to do with it. We thought about donating it to the British Museum as a national treasure. We really did. We felt a sense of duty to the crown. We thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Rodney corrected. and then we decided to flog it. Del grinned. 6.5 million quid, Justin. Can you imagine that? 6.5 million of the Queen's finest nuggets. We divvied the dosh up, making sure our Uncle Albert got a nice little drink, bless his old seafaring soul, and we thought of others. We donated to charity. Enormously, of course. We bought a round of drinks for the whole Nag's Head, Rodney whispered. That was our charity work. It felt like a charity, Del insisted. Have you seen the state of Trigger? He needs all the help he can get. So, eventually, we had to start thinking about our future. We sought out a city stockbroker, a man with a tie thinner than a strand of spaghetti and a brain like a calculator. He advised us to invest in a new and vibrant venture, a Central American market. Del stood up, pacing the small office. It was attracting massive funds from all over the world. We were making more money than the Royal Mint. We weren't just flat, Justin. We were ascendant. Chapter 4, The Fall of the Empire. The flashback in Del's mind was vivid. He remembered the heat of the Caribbean, the smell of expensive sun cream, and the feeling of a platinum credit card in his pocket, a card that felt like it had the power to stop the rotation of the earth if he swiped it hard enough. He remembered Raquel, his significant other, looking like a movie star in a wide-brimmed hat. He remembered young Damien, the fruit of his loins, playing on the deck of a yacht. He remembered Rodney and Cassandra, looking like they finally belonged in a world where the wine didn't come from a box. And then the music changed. It wasn't a sudden explosion. It was the sound of a phone not ringing. It was the sight of a computer screen flickering with red numbers that shouldn't have been there. She's into superstitions. The radio had been playing in the hotel lobby. Livin' La Vida Loca. It turned out, Del said, his voice dropping an octave, that negotiations between the Central American countries had collapsed, wiped out. The market didn't just crash. It evaporated. It was like someone had pulled the plug on the ocean. We'd even paid for the hotel on a credit card, Rodney added, the ghost of the trauma still visible in his eyes. A credit card which was withdrawn while we were still at the breakfast buffet. I was halfway through a bowl of exotic fruit, and suddenly I was an international pauper. Del nodded solemnly, but Derek Trotter is, if nothing else, a creative businessman. I came up with a solution. We had to leave. Fast. We ran, Rodney said. We literally ran for the airport while the concierge was still looking for the bill. Chapter 5, The Financial Wilderness. The return to the UK was not met with a ticker-tape parade. The news of the Trotter collapse had traveled faster than a Peckham rumor. How long did it take for the news to hit the UK? Justin asked, scribbling notes furiously. About as long as it took for someone to push a button on the internet. Del sighed. Suddenly, all our so-called business associates wouldn't return our calls. We were cast into a financial wilderness. It was like the desert, but with more rain and less sand. And then there was Mike. Rodney reminded him. Dole's face darkened. Mike Fisher, the landlord of the Nag's Head, a man who had seen the Trotters as his ticket out of the pub trade. Mike invested his life savings in our venture, Dell explained. He actually remortgaged the pub. He's in prison now, awaiting trial. The fraud squad claims he tried to recoup his losses by embezzling the brewery. Never was a man more innocent. He confessed to everything, Dell, Rodney pointed out. He was under duress. Dell shouted, "The pressure of the brewing industry is immense." The narrative shifted to the waiting room of the court. The atmosphere was thick with the smell of cheap coffee and the nervous sweat of Peckham's finest. Denzel was pacing, wearing the marble floor down. Uncle Albert was sitting there, looking like a weary old owl. Trigger was. Well, Trigger was staring at a wall, possibly having a conversation with his own shadow. Trig, if I go in there and tell the truth, Denzel had said, Dell and Rodney are going to be spending the next 5 years sharpening Jeffrey Archer's pencils. I'm going to tell them I hear voices. Trigger had replied with the terrifying sincerity of the truly confused. Chapter 6. The Wrong Side of the Grave. The funeral of Uncle Albert should have been a moment of dignified sorrow. Instead, it was a master class in Trotter-esque absurdity. The family stood in the biting cold of a coastal cemetery. Dell was genuinely heartbroken. Albert had been their anchor, the man who had survived the Battle of the Baltic only to be nearly killed by those cooking. I feel bad, Dell whispered to Rodney as they stood by the grave, leaving him here on his own while we were off globe-trotting. We should have taken him to Barbados. He didn't have a passport, Dell, Rodney reminded him. He thought the Germans were still looking for him. They stood amongst a group of strangers. A woman named Marion was crying. A man named Roland was complaining about Albert's wartime sagas. God, he did go on, didn't he? Roland sneered. Never bloody stopped. The John Wayne of the East End. Dole's blood began to simmer. It reached boiling point. He stepped forward, his eyes blazing. You got to remember that a lot of blokes lost their lives for our liberty, just so that 50 years later, prats like you would have the freedom to knock them. You want to go outside and have a chat, Roland? Calm down, Dell, Rodney pleaded. It was only when the young boy, Damien, looked up at a passing plane and asked if it was a Spitfire that the reality hit them. Wait a minute, Dell said, looking at the headstone. Bunny. Why did you call him Bunny? Because his surname was Warren, Roland said. Albert Warren. Raff. The silence that followed was heavy. Rodney, Dell whispered, his face turning ashen. We're at the wrong funeral. Oh, let's go. Rodney hissed, grabbing Bill's arm. They fled the cemetery like grave robbers who had forgotten their shovels. Chapter 7. the phoenix arises, sort of. Back in Nelson Mandela House, the grandeur of the millionaire years felt like a dream someone else had had. The flat was cramped, the wallpaper was peeling, and the inland revenue was knocking on the door with the persistence of a woodpecker on a metal pole. The court declared me bankrupt, Dell announced to the family. But don't worry, I've worked it all out. I'm a trader. I could sell rice to the Chinese. The firm's been liquidized, Dell, Rodney said, sitting at the kitchen table. Disqualified. Dell corrected. I've been disqualified from running it. That doesn't mean the company is dead. We just need a new managing director. Someone young. Someone enthusiastic. Someone with to GCEs. Rodney looked up, a glimmer of hope or madness in his eyes. Me? Yes, you, Rodney. You can take over Trotter's independent traders. Legally, there's nothing to stop you. You're clean, mostly. And so, the new era began. Rodney Trotter, managing director, Dell took a back seat, or rather, he sat in the front seat and shouted directions while Rodney tried to drive. They were back in business. They were trading again. The goal, $48,750 for pounds. That was the debt. That was the mountain they had to climb. Chapter 8, The Golden Ticket. The idea for Gold Rush came to Dell like a divine revelation during a late-night session of channel hopping. It's a game show, Rodney, Dell shouted, bursting into the living room. Jonathan Ross, you can win 100,000 quid. It's the fastest game show on TV. Dell, you think King Edward introduced the potato to England? Rodney said flatly. I didn't hear the question properly. Dell insisted. I've worked it out. I'm going to apply. This time next year, we'll be millionaires. Again. This time last week we were millionaires, Cassandra pointed out from the kitchen. But Dell was already filling out the form. He wasn't just a bankrupt salesman from Peckham anymore. In his mind, he was a Renaissance man, a lover of fine wines, the theater, and 16th century Italian art. He was Derek Trotter, and the world hadn't seen the last of him. Chapter 9, The Brunei Connection. The telephone in the Trotter household was a fickle instrument. Sometimes it brought news of a consignment of hooky VCers. Other times, it was just the electric company wondering if Dell intended to pay his bill within the current century. One evening, as Rodney was trying to maintain a facade of managing director gravitas, the phone rang. Trotter's independent traders, how may I help you? Rodney said, his voice an octave deeper than usual. Good evening, a voice responded, accented and dripping with importance. I am wishing to speak with managing director. This is he, Rodney said, puffing out his chest. My name is Rodney Trotter. I am representative of the Sultan of Brunei, the voice continued. Rodney's heart did a little tap dance against his ribs. He looked at Dell, who is currently trying to clean a fake Rolex with a bit of spit and a rag. Del, it's the Sultan of Brunei. Del stopped rubbing the watch. Yeah, and I'm the Pope's golf partner. Give it here. But Rodney was already hooked. How may I be of assistance? Sir, His Highness has seen your advertisement in the newspaper. He would like you to fly to Brunei and be his consultant. Rodney's eyes glazed over. He could see it now. Gold-plated yachts, silk robes, and a world where duty-free wasn't just a suggestion. Consultant. On what, specifically? Recently, the voice said, suppressed laughter starting to bubble through the accent, His Highness bought a crappy old three-wheeled van, and he wants to know how to start it on cold mornings. The line exploded into the unmistakable, high-pitched cackle of Mickey Pierce. Rodney slammed the phone down. I knew it was him. I was just winding him up. Del shook his head. Rodney, you're about as good at winding people up as a sundial in a coal cellar. Get back to your paperwork. Chapter 10, Fantasy Therapy. Rodney's marriage to Cassandra was, in his own words, a series of minor hiccups in the bedroom department. To address this, Rodney had turned to the modern equivalent of a witch doctor, a lifestyle magazine. It's called Fantasy Therapy, Cass, Rodney explained that night, his voice hushed. This expert in America says our troubles stem from memory baggage. We need to become different people, reborn. Cassandra looked at him over the top of her book. Different people. Do I get to be someone who lives in a house without a yellow vent parked outside? No, it's about iconoclastic autosuggestion. Rodney insisted. We write down our fantasy figure, and for one night, the other person becomes that figure. No dressing up required. It's all in the mind. All right, Cassandra sighed. I'll try anything to stop you talking about memory baggage. They wrote down their choices. Cassandra handed her slip to Rodney. He opened it and blinked. The bill. You want me to be a copper? Just a position of authority. Rodney, she said, a mischief glint in her eye. Rodney's own fantasy involved a certain gladiator, or maybe a heroic figure from a film he'd seen recently. He didn't say it, but he had a plan. The next evening, the plan went horribly wrong. Del burst into the flat to find Cassandra dressed in a full policewoman's uniform, complete with a baton and a look of professional disapproval. Rodney, on the other hand, was standing there in a leather tunic, looking like he'd been rejected from a low-budget production of Spartacus. Oh, my God, Del shouted, nearly dropping his bag of takeaway. I thought we were being raided. Cassandra, I didn't know you joined the force. And Rodney, what are you? A Roman centurion with a vitamin D deficiency. It's a fancy dress party. Del, Rodney yelled, his face turning a shade of purple that matched his tunic. We're going to a party. My ex-boss at the bank invited us. At 5:30, Del asked, skeptical. A bit early for a rave, isn't it? It's an early party for people who have to be up for work. Rodney grabbed Cassandra's arm. Come on, Reg Hollis, let's go before he starts asking for our badges. Chapter 11, The Lights of Gold Rush. The BBC television studios were a labyrinth of cables, tired security guards, and the smell of industrial-grade hairspray. Del stood in the wings of the Gold Rush set, adjusting his suit. He told the producers he was a connoisseur of the arts. He told them his hobbies included fine wines and 16th century Italian Renaissance art. In reality, his knowledge of fine wine stopped at anything that didn't have a screw top. And the only Renaissance art he owned was a framed picture of a crying boy that he'd bought at a car boot sale in 1984. Welcome to another edition of the show that is taking the country by storm. The voice of Jonathan Ross boomed through the speakers. This is Thursday. This is live. This is Jonathan Ross, and this is Gold Rush. Del stepped onto the stage, his smile fixed, his rings gleaming under the studio lights. Beside him were his competitors, Mike Wallace, a financial advisor who looked like he'd swallowed a lemon, and Janice Scott, who seemed genuinely terrified of the cameras. And finally, Ross announced, "We have Derek Trotter from Peckham." Derek is a businessman who lives with Raquel, his significant other. His pastimes include fine wines, the theater, and 16th century Italian Renaissance art. Del gave a thumbs up. Lovely jubbly. Jonathan, just happy to be here for the culture, you know. Chapter 12, The Rainbow Road. The game began with a flurry of questions. Del's finger was poised over the buzzer like a predator waiting for a slow-moving gazelle. Whose famous diary recorded the plague and the Great Fire of London? Ross asked. Del hit the buzzer. Mrs. Dale's. The studio went silent. Ross blinked. Nice try, Del, but I'm afraid that's not right. You're frozen now. Eventually, through a series of fluke errors by his opponents, Del found himself as the first challenger on the Rainbow Road. He stood in the center of the stage, a 1-pound coin clutched in his hand, his guaranteed prize. Whatever else happens, that's yours, Ross said. Just make sure it ain't Irish, eh? Del quipped, winking at the camera. He breezed through the early rounds. He knew Kilimanjaro was in Africa mostly because he'd once tried to sell a crate of T-shirts with the mountain printed on the wrong side. He survived a challenge from Janice. The money climbed. 10,000, 25,000. And then the green question. In which state was President Kennedy born? Del hesitated. He remembered the news footage. He remembered the tragedy. Well, when he was assassinated in 1963, he was in a terrible state. He died. I need the name of the state. Del, Ross urged. Texas, Florida, or California? Del sweated. He used his shot in the dark. Florida, he shouted. No, Ross sighed. It was Texas. But you played your shot, so you're still in the game for the penalty question. Chapter 13, the Ravel debacle. The penalty question was worth 50,000 pounds. If Dell got it right, he'd move to the final gold question for 100,000. Which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and the Enchantment? Was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Those brains stalled. Classical music. He was a man of the people. He liked the theme from Z Cars and anything by Tom Jones. He needed his SOS. He needed his brother. My brother, Rodney, Dell said, he's a graduate to GCEs. He knows his classics. Back in the flat, the phone rang. Rodney, still in his Spartacus tunic, answered it. Hello, Rodney. It's Jonathan Ross. Oh, piss off. Mickey, you're getting on my tits now. Rodney yelled. Rodney, it's not Mickey. It's the BBC. Your brother is on 50 grand. Realization hit Rodney like a bucket of cold water. He listened to the question. Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Ravel. Rodney shouted into the phone. I'm 100% sure, Dell, it's Ravel. Dell, back in the studio, looked at the camera with the confidence of a man who had just been handed the keys to the Bank of England. It's Ravel, Jonathan. My brother knows. He's got the brains in the family. Are you sure, Derek? Ross asked. You don't have to take his answer. No. Rodney's spot on. Ravel. The buzzer sounded a long, agonizing drone of failure. Derek, Ross said, his voice filled with genuine pity. That was the wrong answer. It was Segovia. Dell's face fell. The 100,000 pounds vanished into the ether. What? But Rodney said he's got to GCEs. Chapter 14, The Return of the Conqueror Not. The journey back to Peckham was long and silent. Dell walked through the door of the flat to find Rodney and Cassandra waiting, still dressed as a gladiator and a policewoman. What happened? Rodney asked, his voice small. What happened? Dell exploded. What happened is that you're a dipstick, Rodney. That's what happened. Everyone knows that Ravel makes shoes. It was a trick question, and you fell for it. Shoes? Rodney stammered. Ravel wrote Bolero. I don't care if he wrote the Bible. He makes shoes in the Peckham High Street. You lost us 50 grand. The argument raged until the phone rang again. It was the producer of Gold Rush. Hello. Yes, this is Derek Trotter. What? No. Really? Dell turned to the room, his eyes wide. There's been a mistake. The producer says it was Ravel. Segovia was just the guitarist who performed it or something. They've checked the facts. I can have the 50,000 pounds and come back on the show next week. The room erupted. Rodney cheered. Raquel cried. Even Cassandra hugged her prisoner. See, Dell shouted, his voice reaching a crescendo of triumph. I knew I was right. I knew the Trotters were back. He grabbed the phone again. Yeah. Well, I tell you what we're going to do. Give all the money to charity. Yeah. And if you phone here once again, I'm going to come down there and kick your arse into shredded duck. He slammed the phone down. Del, Rodney screamed. What did you do that for? Because, Del said, a sly grin spreading across his face, that wasn't the producer. I could hear the jukebox at the Nag's Head. That was Mickey Pierce again. He sat down, exhausted but undefeated. Don't worry, Rodney. This time next year, we'll be millionaires. And in the heart of Peckham, for the 1,000th time, they almost believed him. Chapter 15, the morning after the morning after. The following morning, Nelson Mandela House felt like the setting of a hungover Greek tragedy. The adrenaline of the gold rush debacle had dissipated, leaving only the cold reality of the inland revenue's interest rates and the lingering smell of Raquel's burnt toast. Del sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea that was mostly condensed milk and desperation. He was staring at a pile of bills as if he could intimidate them into paying themselves. Rodney, Del barked as his brother shuffled into the kitchen, looking like a man who had spent the night sleeping in a tumble dryer. Where is the inventory for the new stock? Rodney groaned, rubbing his eyes. Del, it's 8 in the morning, and technically, since I'm the managing director, shouldn't I be asking you for that? Del let out a short, sharp laugh. Managing director. Rodney, you're the only managing director in London who still gets an allowance from his older brother. Now, where is it? It's in the van. Rodney sighed.